Recorded Books and RB Digital present Children of the Bloodlands, The Realms of Ancient, Book 2, by S.M. Beiko, narrated by Morgan Hallett. The One True Child. Northern Scotland. "Stop crying and be braver," Albert had said. But now his mouth wasn't moving. The skin of his forehead was as split as the crack in the world they had found, but his forehead was leaking red, leaking too quickly and too much. Saskia had crouched stiff and numb more than an hour, pressing her whole body weight into the wound to make the red stop. "Stop crying." But she couldn't. Not in the dark, in the cold, as she made slow progress through the woods. She thought about all the things Albert had said, the things that led to this. She exhaled a shaking breath, dragging the heavy sack through the crunchy leaves. The rope burned her small hands. Albert wouldn't say a thing anymore. It had been their secret, his and Saskia's. What they'd found down in the woods at the bottom of the scrabby glen that day, months ago, just after Saskia had turned 8. Papa had been home, rare occasion that it was. She understood that they needed money to pay the bills, and that Papa needed to work as much as he did, but sometimes she resented the long road that kept him from them for weeks and weeks. And there was also the invisible road inside of them that divided their hearts. The road paved black when Mum had died. On that brighter day, the day after her birthday, Papa took them for a walk. He wasn't as strong as she remembered him being. He seemed bowed as a croggled tree. His knees weren't in good shape, and he wasn't young. Albert was 15, but their parents had had them late in life. Saskia didn't mind. This is how she thought all parents were. Old and grown and wiser than she ever could be. But she could see age in Papa's stiff walk, the hours and days of driving taking its toll. It made her feel sick. "Go on ahead, you wee gomerel," he'd said, sitting on the crest of a hill. "I can see it from here." But they'd gone too far into the woods, and Saskia knew Papa couldn't see them anymore. Albert always had to go far as he could to make it count. Saskia only ever wanted to be near him. She wanted his protection, and she wanted to protect him too. But above all, she wanted to show she could be brave. Albert stopped at a massive split in the rock of the Monroe. It was as if a big axe had cut it in half. The sun shone into it, revealing the barest crack in the world. Albert climbed down to investigate. Saskia didn't protest, but she wanted to. "There's something down here," he said, frowning into the small crater. "You've got small hands, come on." Saskia twisted her shirt in those small hands and picked her way down. She and Albert bent, heads touching, and she put her hand in. "Sss." Saskia pulled her hand back, shaking it. "What?" Albert grabbed her hand, alarmed, and they both stared at the cut, the blood trickling around Saskia's wrist and dripping into the crack. The ground shook, and Saskia screamed. Albert grabbed her hand, pulled her up the hill, and they took off in a blur back the way they'd come. Papa was close to laying an egg because of how long they'd been gone. Albert was too breathless to explain the cut on Saskia's hand, to waylay Papa's anger as he wrapped it up too tightly in his handkerchief, making Saskia wince as he dragged them both home in furious silence. "Where did you get a knife?" Papa asked gruffly, not believing either of them when they said there was no knife. Just a crack in the ground whose darkness haunted them all the way home. Albert stayed up most of the night thinking about that crack. "I had a dream about it," he said. "We have to go back." It didn't matter what Saskia felt about it. She would go where Albert went. And that he'd said we meant he wanted her there, meant she had to. They rushed out when Aunt Millie had fallen asleep in her chair in front of the telly. They knew they'd have more than a chance the minute the whiskey bottle clattered.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?